Shalom. I'm Nama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue, and we are continuing into our fourth video, explaining the laws of the Shmita and the intricacies around it of the Shmita year. There was a lot that we covered so far as an overview, understanding the principles, certain specifics about the requirements. And last video, we talked a lot about the sanctity of the produce and how the sanctity gets transferred. And I just wanted to say that when I only made Aliyah 2 years ago, and I still feel elevated just being in the Holy Land and walking on the land and breathing the air and feeling the sun on me, and it, and the miracles that happen, it just feels incredible to me. So I really, eating the fruit of, the Holy Land is really special to me too. Like, I just feel immersed. And so when we talk about that there's actually explanation spiritually for the sanctity, I'm very curious how that works.
What we did last time was pretty complicated, so I'm going to try a different way of explaining it. There are two types of obligatory animals two types of obligatory animal sacrifices that anyone that raises animals in any number, kosher animals in any number, would have to bring. So let us say I have 100 ewes. Each ewe each year generally gives birth to 2 offspring. Now, if the first time a ewe gives birth, it gives birth to a male offspring, that is a bechor, a firstborn, that has to be offered in the temple. In addition to that, I have my 200 animals that have been born, and I put them in a pen, and I let them out one at a time through a narrow opening, and I have a can of red paint and a giant Q-tip about 3 inches in diameter at the end, made out of wool or cotton wrapped around a stick of some kind. And I count the animals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And on the 10th one, I hit its head to dab it with the red paint. So I know that this animal is Meiser Behema, is a tithe of the animal. So if I have 200 lambs in the year, I'll have 20 that I have to take to the temple, the sacrifices. Now, an animal that develops a permanent blemish that will not leave, and it's one of the many types of things that render an animal unfit as a sacrifice, then it has to be redeemed, and another sacrifice brought in its place. So we evaluate how much money this animal is worth, either the firstborn or the Meiser Behema, or the tithe of the newborn animals of this year. And I buy another animal with it and sell it off. Now, this, if we're talking about Meiser Behema, the tithe, it wasn't born holy. It became holy when I daubed its head with the paint. And in fact, if I made a mistake and I had daubed the 11th one instead of the 10th one or something like that, that one would have become holy in this place, but the 12th one wouldn't. But that's...
So when you designate it for an offering, it becomes holy.
When I designate it as the 10th, it becomes holy. And therefore, because it wasn't always holy, the sanctity can be removed. And when I've now redeemed this animal, I have the money that I'm going to use to buy another sacrifice. This animal can be taken to the butcher and slaughtered and sold in all the normal ways. The butcher can weigh the meat and so on when he's selling it. However, if it was a bechor, a firstborn, which is kadosh mirechem imo, it was sanctified from its mother's belly, then even though I've redeemed it and I brought another sacrifice in its place, when this animal is slaughtered, I cannot weigh the meat to sell it. It still has a level of intrinsic holiness to it, and therefore it cannot be treated in the normal commercial ways. I have to do different things with it. I have to be respectful of it. I can't do anything disgusting with it, and so on. So the fruit of Shmita is different than Trumot U'Masrot. When I harvest my crop,
sorry, we're talking about like offerings, like truma and maser for the animals is for temple times.
right? I said it's different and not exactly the same.
Okay.
But here is the way it is exactly the same.
Okay.
When I harvest my crop, it's all called tevel, meaning it's mixed up. The Trumot U'Masrot are mixed up with the chulin, with the non-sanctified things, and any part of that could be designated as truma. Our minhag is say the north side of what I have here is going to be truma. I could say the south side. I could say the east side. I could say something from the middle. I could say the northwest side. It doesn't matter. Any part I wanted, I could designate as holy. And just like I designated it as holy, there are certain ways, depending upon what it is, that sanctity can be removed, which is different than the Shmita or the Bechor, the firstborn, that was always holy, and therefore it always retains a level of its sanctity. So if I go out and I get a lot of things from my vineyard, more than I actually need for a few meals, and someone else, my friend went and he captured a deer, and I really like deer meat. I like venison. So I could trade some of the stuff that I've gotten for that deer. Now, the deer now has the sanctity of Shmita attached to it, and the produce retains its sanctity of Shmita that can never be removed because the produce grew in a holy state, and therefore that can never be changed. And if you think, there's another halacha that we'll learn later on, that fruit is sanctified based upon when it flowered. So fruit that we harvest at the beginning of the Shmita year does not have the sanctity of the Shmita because it flowered before. It was not created in a state of sanctity. Whereas that which flowers in the Shmita year and develops in its initial development of the fruit is during the Shmita year. Even though I harvest it after the Shmita year is over, it will have the sanctity of the Shmita fruit because it's how it developed. If something developed as a fruit of the Shmita, it will always retain that sanctity. And therefore, even the leftovers of food, we have to be careful with and treat them in a way of sanctity and not in a way of bizayon, not in a way of insult. And this fact that these things will always have a certain level of sanctity to them becomes important as we go through the laws of how we take care of these fruits in our kitchens.
When you say leftovers, is that something for a later video?
Absolutely.
Okay.